Hello, and welcome to The Edge. I'm Cole Szymanski.
And I'm Payton Jenkins.
Back when I was in 8th grade, I finally built up enough confidence to ask my co-host, Payton, out on a date. Those next couple of days, I spent physically and mentally preparing myself for my date with Payton. The day came. I woke up Friday morning with butterflies in my stomach, and they lasted the entire school day, all the way up until my mom picked us up to go to late skate at Mount Lebo Ice Rink. At late skate, Payton and I discovered that we were not soulmates, but we would probably just be better off as friends. The date was awkward, and long story short, a disaster. It was my very first date, and to this day, I'm still not very good at first dates. But how can you get better if you don't try?
Since Cole and I went skating, the dating scene has changed drastically, especially since we were only in 8th grade. People have created a stigma around first dates, and social media has started to play a major role. First dates are seen as pivotal to predicting the trajectory of a relationship. According to psychologynow.com, the first date isn't just a way of getting to know basic facts about a person. It's also a time when you look for signals to suggest that your potential partner may be interested in you. I'm sure everyone has questions on first dates, including me. Whether it be, how do I know if my date is into me, or what should I wear on my first date? So today we have Nan Cohen joining us. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, so first I wanted to ask you a little bit about your job. Like, what's your job title? Like, what do you do?
Well, I do host talk radio here in town, and I have a divorce business, and then that led me into a matchmaking business.
Cool.
So I'm very diversified in what I do.
So I'm guessing you know a lot about dating.
I think I do. I think I do.
So how would you say first dates set the stage for the rest of a relationship, potential relationship?
Well, I don't think in today's time you got to take the first date, the first meeting, and you have to enjoy it. You can't think about what's down the road or how long that's going to be. You just got to live for the moment when you finally get to meet that person. That's where it starts for me.
Yeah. And I think social media has kept us like so connected that it doesn't really matter. Like the first date, like you already kind of know the person before you even go on the date. So, yeah.
Well, you kind of fill yourself up first, right?
Yeah.
you see somebody and you think, oh, that could be interesting. Mm-hmm. But let me go check my social media platforms.
Yeah.
Let me hop on
Google
Facebook.
them.
let me go check out their Instagram, their Twitter, whatever. And I think that kind of takes away from some of it, because I really stress, especially on the radio, that I'm not really for internet dating. I don't support that as much, because I think that you can get very powerful behind a keyboard.
Yeah.
And you can become something that sometimes you don't think that you're portraying out there, but it sometimes sets the wrong tone.
And how do you think people portray themselves differently on the internet than rather in like real life?
Well, because I think perception sometimes becomes reality for people. It's like when you go onto some of those dating sites, you look and you see pictures of people that are not as they look today.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm
Edited
thinking to myself, so they think they look better then instead of being who they are now. And I think that's where you get a lot of that cross back and forth. Why would you want to hopefully meet somebody and you're walking around a coffee shop looking for somebody that's showing you a 20-year-old picture?
Yeah.
That's pretty true. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And why would you say first dates aren't as crucial anymore as they used to be?
I think first dates are crucial because there has to be some connection, but I don't think you have to judge everything by a first date, because how do you get to know everything about this person?
Yeah.
You know, you've got anxiety a little bit of how do I behave, what do I wear, is this perfect? That to me is, we want things organically. Mm-hmm. We want them to happen where they just become natural. And it's it's just awkward at first.
Yeah. So how is it easier to make those type of things organic?
Be yourself. Be yourself. You can't be, the model that you see on the runway, or you can't wear the outfit that's right for somebody else. You've got to do those things for yourself. What you're comfortable with and who you are, that's what you need to portray.
Yeah, because a lot of times, like, if you're acting like someone else and you think you have a connection with someone, they don't really even know you to know if they have a connection with you.
And then you hurt your chances for a second meeting.
Yeah.
So that's the other part of it.
Yeah, I personally feel like that's a pretty big part of it is why like a lot of relationships don't work out, is because people just try to be something they're not, and then once they start to show their true colors, the other person may not like that as much, or they may have.
They feel like they didn't even know them in the first place.
Yeah. Exactly, because you weren't your true self.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so switching gears here. Have you ever heard of speed dating? I wanted to ask you about this.
I have.
Do you think that works? Do you think speed dating is like a viable option for trying to find someone?
Well, do you think you're going to know me when I walk off this interview in 5 minutes? If somebody's going to ring a bell and say time's up? I don't. I think that what that gives you is just the overall appearance. I call that's the eye candy piece of dating. Is there some draw there? You like what you see, but you may not like what you hear because you haven't heard anything other than your first judgment piece.
Yeah.
I'm not for that.
I think there's just like so many kinds of like different types of dating, like speed dating, online dating. Like people are just trying to find someone, and like I think the most like, I don't know, valuable way to find someone would be just like meeting them like somewhere, I don't know.
So I like to take, with the services that we do, I like to tell people, what's the best thing that can happen out of a date?
You get a second date.
You met somebody nice.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing that could happen.
You
You don't talk to them again.
And and you don't know, because that person could have been right for you, but you just let them walk away. So I always say, go and meet and enjoy yourself. This could be your next best friend, but I say that friend has friends. You've got to be able to market yourself. You've got to be able to get out there, because the landscape of dating when I grew up isn't like the landscape of dating where you're at. So you go and you have that base where just have fun and say, oh, I have interest in this and I have interest in that. Hey, I have a friend that has interest in that. You never know where that can go, and that's what happens when I talk about organically. So you spoke of your date, but she may have had friends that might have been perfect for you, right?
Julia.
Oh, there you go. See how that happens? Do you want to work for me?
Oh my gosh, yes, I'll take a job.
Okay. But I like the fact that and the pressure's off, right? So you didn't have the best of first dates, but you may have gained a friend or somebody that you can call and say, hey, I have nothing to do. You just want to hang out, and it can that's just good enough.
That's
sometimes.
like how me and Cole we're friends now. Like,
I don't hate her all because back in 8th grade we didn't have a good date. So, I mean,
now we're friends.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Help each other through problems all the time. Yeah.
But if you both walked away from that first meeting saying, "No way," where would you be today?
Not on the show right now.
Probably not.
The easiest thing to do is take something positive away. You know, every day I always say to people, whenever I meet people, you take something away. So even if it's not the best of first dates, take something away from it. Maybe you didn't speak, properly. Maybe you didn't have enough engagement with that person. But self-reflect and look and think to yourself, I won't do that next time, or I couldn't get to feel the situation out.
Yeah. And why would you say that? I feel like most people, whenever a first date doesn't go well or whatever, they just kind of walk away from it. But like you said, if Payton and I just walked away from our date, then we may not have been friends. So why do you think people walk away from that maybe not so good first date?
Because I think as a society today, everything's an instantaneous world.
Yeah.
And if you don't meet that person, it's not an instant hit, you just say, I'm done, on to the next. And that's where I think people sell themselves short, because as I said, the landscape of dating has changed tremendously out there. And so you want to get out there and make the best of the situation, not the worst of the situation.
And then I had a question. I find a lot of times that like one person is more into another person than like they are, like then the other person is into them. And I was just wondering, like, how can you like look for signs on like that, like if someone's not as into you as you are into them?
Well, I think that you can't be too overbearing.
Yeah.
And sometimes we want to push our pieces across the table, right?
Right.
And say, well, here's everything I got. I think you have to slowly grow that. If you're into sports and somebody's into something different, you've got to engage the sports talk and maybe the foodie talk. You have to slowly grow that. No, well, that person's really energized over, loves to hit all the sports pieces. but what could I maybe take that conversation and, hey, do you like to take a walk in the park?
Yeah.
So going back to the like sort of, I don't know what we were on before. How can
Whatever that
someone?
was, yeah.
You're taking a lot of mental notes here, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So how can someone get better at first dates? Because I feel like a lot of people, especially at our age, aren't really too good at them.
We don't even like go on
Yeah,
first dates.
it's just
though.
kind of like
just like hang out in their basement.
Send them
I
a
don't know,
text,
it's,
and you're just
weird.
like, hey, I'm
Wanna
not.
go
Well,
Sonic,
there's
I
a
don't
good
know.
thing. How about the texting? That's pretty prevalent when you're
Yeah,
age
it's
It
pretty-
is,
Yeah.
it's very prevalent.
Right, and so you can get a text and you can read it. If I would read it one way and you could read it another,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's out. If somebody was going to ask me out on a text, I wouldn't even consider it. I just wouldn't. I want to hear you say, hey, I'd like to go out with you. Would you like to do this? Would you do that? I think it's too impersonal.
Yeah.
And I think it's even worse when somebody wants to break up with you.
Yeah.
Via
Oh
text.
yeah.
Oh,
Especially.
that is so awful. If someone ever broke up with me over text, that'd be so awful.
It's
I would
just not.
Yeah.
You got to get back to communication. You got to be able
Yeah.
to speak to people, because no matter how powerful the text can be, you eventually have to communicate
Yeah.
via.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been asked out not via text, like in person.
Well, why don't you try that?
I should, honestly.
Yeah. Next time someone asks you out on a date, just be like, come talk to me.
I'll
Actually
say no.
talk to me.
I'll say no if they text me.
Try it. Let's
Yeah.
see. I'll bet you'll get a better response, and you'll also get a feel for the person then.
Yeah. Because then if that person, if the guy's like, or whatever, is like, then no, like fine. If he asks you out on a date over text, and you're like, no, ask me in person. If he just never talks to you again,
Then you
you
know
gain
he's
some
not,
knowledge
yeah,
about that guy.
You know he's
then.
not.
There
a
you
good
go.
guy.
Yeah.
There you go. Communication is key,
It is.
Yes, it really is.
and that doesn't
It's
mean
very
by email or text.
or text
right.
or.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's all the time we
Okay.
have for this part. So we're gonna go to a commercial break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Edge. We're joined here with Nan Cohen talking about first dates.
So, Nan, what are some things you should never talk about on the first date?
It's a good thing you brought that up, because if you had asked me this probably 2 years ago, my answer would have been different. But in today's environment, I'm going to tell you, politics out. You just don't go there. I've had honest from your age to 80. It is such a hot topic. Get to know the person first before you start feeling around for their political views, because I have experienced people that have gotten up and walked out of a first date right off the bat because they've pushed their agenda
crazy.
of politics. So that's my number one thing as of today, that it's an evolution. I wouldn't have had that answer for you.
And are those people that have like gone through your dating service?
Yes, absolutely. We try to get people prepped, before they go on the date. A lot of times we get people that have no experience dating, or they put their careers ahead of themselves, or they're divorced, or maybe widowed, and they're getting back out into this dating world. And we coach them through it. It's scary. It's scary at any age, but that's the number one thing I'd say. Please keep your political pieces in due time. As a relationship evolves, that's one thing. I'm not saying you hide it, but I don't think that you give somebody a fair chance right off that.
Like the first question you ask is like
anywhere on that
political.
first date.
Yeah.
Anywhere. I'd rather you talk, what kind of food do you like? But
Yeah.
stay away from that, the political.
Until you get more comfortable with that person.
Yeah.
And you have to
get a feel
understand
for them.
why they have their political
Yeah.
views, and I think that grows over time. And it doesn't mean that people, the opposite political views, can't get together, because that's okay. But I think if you're going to prejudge it right off the bat, that's where you sell yourself short.
And then does your service, do you guys set up the date, or are you just coaching people back into the dating?
So it's twofold. We absolutely, I know you'll be surprised to hear this. In our matchmaking business, we use no computer program.
Really?
No algorithms. We're inundated with services trying to sell this to us. We went back to the old style of matchmaking, and there has to be something that we feel would bring a couple together to get onto that first date. And we usually do it over a dinner. So we like to build conversation. And I'm just about ready to get to the point where I'm going to tell clients that are going out, phones are off limits, because you'll see them sit down and each will have their phone ready to go.
Like checking their texts and stuff.
Due to occupations, some people have to be attached to it. I get that, but we're going to change some rules with that as upcoming months for sure.
And why would you say that dinner is the best place to go on a first date instead of going to a movie or going to a museum or something?
So I like the fact of everybody has to eat, right?
Yeah.
They can skip breakfast, they can skip lunch, but I want to hope that they're going to get dinner. And at that point, a lot of times people need just to relax. Busy days, busy nights, busy weekends, but everybody has to eat. So we like to do it over a dinner where we feel that conversation can kick up. There's always something to talk about in a particular restaurant. The food, the decor. We try to give them something that they can go with. And here, when you walk away from that date, that dinner date, at least you ate. Right? Simplistically, right? That's right, you got a meal.
Maybe you got a free meal out of it too.
You might have, but it doesn't work that way. Each member will pay for their own meal.
Okay.
But we've had so there's no pressure on it. But on occasion we hear more often not somebody picked up the check. But the great thing is you walk away, and what's the worst thing that could happen? Now we've decreased that. You've had a meal, and you may have gained some interest in maybe going on to a second date.
And so, like you're, correct me if I'm wrong, you're a divorce expert also, right?
I am.
So how would you say, because I know coming from my parents are divorced, that whenever, I was really little, but it took them a pretty decent time to start getting back in the dating game. So why do you think that divorced couples, typically it takes them longer, or they don't think that they'll be able to date again? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think in your case, you said you were little, so I think parents need to get the stabilization of that family. Point whereas you just didn't leave mom or dad, and now there's a new, somebody else coming into the house. And I think a lot of people need to settle into that stage of their life. Some people stay in that stage a little too long, and then they have some, when is it my time? And they struggle there. Other ones seem to come out of a divorce at any age and are just ready to hit the ground running. And again, everybody's individualized there.
All right, so going along with the divorced, how would you say that the divorced first dates are different from, you'd say, our age?
Fantastic question. Because you know what normally happens? A divorced person, that's all they want to talk about is their divorce. Good point, huh? That's all they want. And so you have to understand that I may have fixed you up being divorced with somebody who just lost their spouse. So I have somebody that's coming out of a divorce that may not have been a good divorce, so they may have a little bit of anger, resentment, they didn't want this part of their life to be. It's conversing with somebody that lost the love of their life. So how does that work? So that's kind of where some of the coaching comes in. You've got to say, even if I had divorced with a divorced person across it, it's not about your divorce. This isn't the time. There's time to grow and learn what happened in that marriage, but you don't need to sell that person across the table why your ex is lousy. He was a creep, and did this. We don't need to do that. And then you cut your chances, because that person across the table may be at a different place in their divorce and really wants to just go out and start meeting people and enjoying it, and has their divorce piece settled, and now they're opening up the next chapters of their lives. So it gets a little confusing, but you have to tell people that are divorced, this is not the place to play out your divorce.
When you're setting up those matches, do you take into account if they're like divorced or widowed or single? Or
we do.
Do you take that big into account? Like, is it a big factor?
It is, because you'll hear sometimes, quite often you'll hear divorced people say, well, I don't want to date anybody with children. I've already done that and raised my own kids. And then I'll say to them, okay, well, what if somebody said that about you? And all of a sudden I hold the mirror up and that's you. And you let somebody go by because of some ridiculous point. It's kind of, I'm very much on the reality piece of life. Everything I do in all the business is based on reality. You always have to take a self-image of yourself. that could be me someday. Somebody could be saying that about me.
Yeah.
And so you have children, he has children, okay, you can get through it. You're looking at the person across the table saying, could I have a future here? I really like this person. You're going to let children, innocent children, stop that? So that's kind of where we come in. We're coaching and moving the pieces together. You got people that are divorced. Look at the divorce statistics. It's pretty high.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard for sometimes single people that have never been married. You know, they say, I won't date anybody divorced.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're narrowing in your box. Okay,
Yeah.
I've got people say, I won't date somebody over a certain age. Narrowing your box. I have to get people to say, okay, that's fine, but you're closing in your pieces of who is out there in the landscape for you to meet.
You're slimming down that
They do
all
it,
those fish in the sea, and now you've taken half of them out, and then one more criteria they need to meet, you take out another half of them, so now there's only a select few left. That's kind of what it seems like. And then
you take it down to, it can't be too tall, can't be too short.
Yeah. Do you find that a lot of your clients are like picky like that?
Yeah, and I think that you can be, but you also have to understand that just because somebody may not have hair or bald doesn't mean they're not a good person.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. When the one thing that I never liked was facial hair. I just wasn't something for me. And my friends laugh because I married a man who has a full beard. So I was limiting myself by saying that way back when, oh, it's just not my look, I wasn't interested. And not here, 21 years later, I love that beard. So again, everybody puts those pieces up, but you have to look beyond that sometimes.
Yeah.
And how would you say that differs from generations? Because I feel like the younger generation now, if they see something they don't like, it's very, nope, I'm not going towards that at all. But I feel like the older you get, the more acceptable you kind of get towards. Not acceptable.
Acceptable.
Well, no, you can use that word because you do. Sometimes you realize this is what you're going to get, because I've already told you about the people close themselves in and make those decisions. Well, when you take all those people out of the mix, this is it. You got to accept what you wanted because you asked for it.
Yeah.
So how can you, like you said, if two divorced people go on a date, how can they start to get to know each other better? Because I feel like a lot of the times after a divorce, people are like, they're hurt inside, especially if it's fresh off of a divorce. They're hurt inside. They don't really want to let themselves open up again. So how can you sort of not just like fully open the can, get to know them, but how can you start to get to know them a little bit better?
Well, I think it doesn't really matter if you're divorced, if you're widowed. I think the general question you're asking is, when you put those pieces together, you have to ask yourself some pieces. Am I ready to do this?
Yeah.
There's times in our lives that we're just not ready for a relationship. And you have to say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to put this on the shelf right now, but don't leave it up there. Don't let too much dust collect. Bring it back to yourself and say, now's my time. I want to get out there. I often feel that sometimes we shortchange ourselves. We get so busy in our jobs. And we see this a lot in the business, that people are coming to us, they've missed their opportunity to have children. For a female, it's like, okay, well, I'm just too late on that. But I might be able to introduce you to somebody that does have children. And there's always you can't close yourself into these pieces. And you have to remember, take the time, when you feel it's right, go with it. If you see somebody or you ask somebody that out and they say no the first time, and okay, go back. Revisit it when you can. Yeah, reconnect. I use the social media platforms, Facebook. It's good, more so than some of the other pieces to it, the other platforms.
Tinder.
Go out. What does it cost you to go send an instant message?
Nothing.
Right.
Very little.
Right. Just do it. So you don't hear from them. Maybe they weren't having a good day. Yeah. Maybe you'll hear from them in a month. I don't sit there and say check that constantly every day, every hour.
Yeah.
But put yourself out there. It's okay. It's good to do.
And why do you think so many people don't put themselves out there?
Because they're fearful of rejection.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, rejection.
Right? If it's fearful of rejection, well, keep going. As we always say, how many frogs do you have to kiss before you find a prince? Right? Keep doing it. Keep going. Just keep trying. It's there. It's out there for you.
Do you have a lot of clients that are like afraid of rejection, and you like help them to overcome that fear, or are you more of just like getting ready for like a date?
I do it both ways. You know, I think that you have to hear what went wrong in their past to understand why, if they feel rejected, and then you try to, you know, motivate them in a different way. Sometimes those roads cross, but again, it comes to the same thing. It's your perspective. It's what you want to put out.
Okay. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Every relationship must start with a first date, even though it might be awkward. It is always nice to learn some tips and tricks when going on that date.
We would like to thank Miss Nan Cohen on joining us for today's episode of The Edge. Hopefully you gained some helpful knowledge when you're going on a first date. I know I did. Thanks for tuning in on this episode of The Edge, and we'll see you next time.